Bro, ever wonder why people love smoking weed? Like, why does one little green plant have the entire world split between it's medicine and it'll ruin your life? From ancient priests using it to talk to gods, to rappers calling it therapy, to scientists studying its effect on your brain, weed's story is actually way deeper than you think. So let's talk about why people smoke marijuana. The science, the psychology, the culture, and why your brain loves it so much. When you take a hit, THC, that's the main chemical in weed, slides into your bloodstream like it owns the place. Within seconds, it's racing to your brain looking for something called endocannabinoid receptors. Now here's the wild part. Your brain already has its own weed system. It naturally produces chemicals called endocannabinoids, tiny molecules that keep your body in balance. They regulate mood, hunger, pain, memory, even how you experience pleasure. So normally your body releases just enough of these chemicals when you're doing good stuff like eating your favorite food, laughing with friends, falling in love, or finally finishing that assignment at 3 a.m. But THC, it barges in like, move over, I got this. It mimics those natural molecules, but it doesn't know when to stop. It's like turning the volume knob on your brain's feel-good system all the way up. That's why suddenly music sounds like it's written just for you, and food tastes like it was cooked by angels, and time starts moving like it's underwater. It's not your imagination. THC actually slows how your brain processes time. Your internal clock stretches, so a 10-minute song feels like a full concert. While this is happening, your brain releases a surge of dopamine, the chemical behind joy and motivation. For some, that means pure bliss, a wave of calm, laughter, deep thoughts. But for others, not so fun. If your brain already runs anxious or overthinks a lot, THC can amplify that too. It's like your thoughts turn into a loud echo chamber. So two people can take the same hit, one's floating on a cloud, and the other's suddenly questioning every decision they've ever made. It all comes down to your brain chemistry, tolerance, and mood before you smoke. If your mind's chill, weed amplifies that calm. If you're stressed, it can amplify that chaos. In short, weed doesn't create feelings, it just turns up whatever's already there. But here's the real reason people smoke again and again. It's not just about chemistry, it's psychology. Life is stressful. People crave an off switch, and weed gives you that quick pause. A moment where everything gets quiet and you just exist. For some, it's self-medication for anxiety or trauma, and for others, it's a creative unlock. You've got thinkers, artists, coders, and musicians swearing by it. And let's be honest, for a lot of people, it's just fun. It turns a normal night into a story. Weed makes the world feel softer, and sometimes that's all people want. What's wild is that people have been using weed for thousands of years, like since civilization itself found out what farming is. In ancient China, records go back over 2,500 years. They called it ma, and it wasn't just for getting high. They used it as medicine, fiber, food, and ritual all in one. Doctors in the Han Dynasty used it to treat pain, malaria, and insomnia. They even mixed it with wine before surgery. Basically, the world's first anesthetic. Meanwhile, in India, weed had a whole spiritual side. They brewed it into a drink called bhang, a holy mix of milk, spices, and cannabis offered to their god. Even today, during festivals like Holi, people drink bhang as part of prayer and celebration. Then there were the Scythians, wild nomadic warriors who lived around modern-day Ukraine and Kazakhstan. When someone died, they didn't just mourn, they built a tent through hot rocks inside, dropped cannabis on the fire, and basically hotboxed the place as part of a funeral ritual. Moving forward a couple thousand years, and we had Queen Victoria's doctor who was literally prescribing cannabis for menstrual pain. And in the 1800s, fancy pharmacies in Europe were selling it like Tylenol. Bottles labeled cannabis extract for rest and relaxation. So yeah, humans and weed go way back, from caveman and warriors to queens and doctors. It's not some modern trend, it's ancient human tradition. So how did something that ancient, a plant used by healers, warriors, and queens, become illegal almost everywhere for decades? It wasn't science or medicine, but actually propaganda, racism, and politics. Back in the early 1900s, the US government needed a new villain. Alcohol had just been legalized again after Prohibition ended, but officials still wanted something to campaign against, something they could link to crime and corruption. And that's when cannabis entered the spotlight, for all the wrong reasons. Newspapers owned by powerful people with ties to the timber and paper industry started printing wild stories about this new drug called marijuana. They said it made people violent, insane, and uncontrollable. Headlines scream things like marijuana assassin of youth. But here's the twist. It wasn't really new. It was already part of Mexican and black jazz culture. So politicians used fear to control those communities. They painted weed as a foreign drug, tied it to racism, and pushed laws to criminalize it. Then came the 1930s, and a man named Harry Anslinger, the first commissioner of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He led a full-on crusade against marijuana, and his logic was that if he could convince America that weed caused violence and insanity, he could grow his department's power. He famously said, "Reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white men." That's how deep the racism ran, and it worked. By 1937, the US passed the Marijuana Tax Act, effectively banning it. Other countries followed, and by the 1970s, under Nixon's war on drugs, it got labeled Schedule 1, the same category as heroin and LSD. Officially, that meant no accepted medical use, high potential for abuse, even as scientists were publishing studies saying, wait, it's not that simple. But here's the part they don't tell you. Leaked Nixon tapes later revealed one of his advisors admitting, quote unquote, "We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be against the war or black, but we could get the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin and then criminalize both." So yeah, weed didn't become illegal because it was dangerous. It became illegal because the government wanted control. While governments were cracking down, scientists kept studying it in secret, and what they found didn't fit the madness narrative at all. Instead of turning people violent, it turned out cannabis might actually help with anxiety, pain, and even epilepsy. But by then, the damage was done. Decades of fear had planted themselves deeper than the plant ever could. The thing with weed is that it isn't purely good or evil. It's a balancing act. Moderate doses can ease anxiety, improve mood, even help with chronic pain or PTSD, and with heavy daily use, it can mess with motivation, short-term memory, or even trigger paranoia. THC and CBD are like yin and yang. One stimulates the brain and one calms it down. That's why some strains make you laugh for hours, and others have you staring at the ceiling thinking about your life choices. It all depends on what's in the weed and who's smoking it. Fast forward to today, and weed's not just surviving, it's thriving. The same plant that was once demonized as reefer madness is now a multi-billion-dollar industry. Dispensaries glow on every corner like Starbucks. You can order gummies, oils, and pre-rolls from your phone, all branded with sleek packaging and crazy names like Pineapple Express or Purple Monkey Ball. There are luxury cannabis lounges and entire tourism industries built around getting high legally. Celebrities have their own strains, like Lil Baby just came out with his own strain. Influencers promote edibles on TikTok. Even Wall Street invests in weed stocks now, the same system that once locked people up for selling it. And while scientists are still piecing together what it does long term, culture has already made up its mind. Weed isn't a symbol of rebellion anymore, it's a lifestyle. But behind all that marketing and money, it's still the same ancient ritual. It's still the same green plant humans have passed around for thousands of years. People still smoke to escape their reality, to connect emotionally, or to feel something real for a moment. So you could say the packaging changed and the laws changed, but the reason people smoke it never changed. So why do people smoke weed? People don't smoke weed just to get high. They do it to feel human, to laugh a little louder, think a little deeper, or forget a little faster. But here's the thing, if you rely on it too much, the escape becomes the prison. I had a friend who went down that road. First, it was just for fun, until it wasn't fun anymore. Over time, it stopped being a choice and started being a routine. I saw him after a month and he looked different. Eyes heavy, skin dull, like the spark was gone. Weed wasn't the problem, it was the dependency. Like anything powerful, it's about balance. But honestly, the smartest move is not to start. Drop your craziest weed stories down below, and if you enjoyed, then subscribe. Thanks for watching.